This is me trying so very hard not to mess up this PC build. I've been using this laptop for a while now, and it sucks, it's slow, and it sucks. And I think it's about time I finally build my PC. But I know nothing about PC building. So I did some research, blah blah blah. PC Parts Picker is my best friend, and I got all my parts. But I miscalculated. Taxes were more than I thought, and I actually spent this amount. I haven't even started building, and I already messed up. I'm gonna end myself. I got my tools, my gloves, and my last will and testament just in case something explodes. Oh, and I also set up this USB to install Windows 11. So the first step in any computer build starts with the motherboard. This is the Gigabyte Aorus B650 Elite AX. It supports Ryzen 7000 CPUs, DDR5 memory, and a bunch of other stuff. After opening the box, I immediately ran into my first problem. My box didn't come with a manual for some reason, but it did come with everything else, and also this weird pamphlet thing that I never used. Don't worry though, I found a solution. I just googled the manual online. After removing the motherboard from the plastic wrap and setting it on the box, it was time to start with the CPU. I decided to get the Ryzen 9 7900, which should be overkill for any computer system. It has 12 cores and 24 threads, whatever the heck that means, but most importantly, it was on sale. When handling the CPU, you must never touch the bottom pins and only hold it by its sides. The pins are extremely fragile and you do not want to break these. To install, unhinge this lever beside the CPU socket and lift the protective layer. Align the golden triangle on the top corner of the CPU with the triangle on the top corner of the socket. Gently drop the CPU into the motherboard without any excess force. Rehinge the lever and the protective layer should come out. And look at that! The CPU is installed! With that out of the way, it's time to move on to RAM. This is 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM from Corsair. RAM goes in these 4 slots on the motherboard, but since I only had 2 RAM sticks, I was a bit confused on where they should go. But I read the manual and apparently they go in slots 2 and 4 for some reason. I don't know. To install the RAM sticks, make sure their notches align with the notches in the slots. Unlock the clips of your RAM channels and then with your RAM sticks, push down firmly until you hear a satisfying click. Great, RAM's installed. Next up is storage. I have a singular Samsung 980 Pro SSD. It holds 2 terabytes of storage and also comes with its own heatsink. First, unscrew the heatsink from the motherboard, unlock this latch, insert the SSD at an angle, press downward, and then relatch it. Normally, you would have to use an adapter screw, but this motherboard is a bit different, so I didn't need it. Also, you would normally screw back the heatsink, but since my SSD already had one, I didn't need to. So now we have the CPU, the RAM, and the memory installed onto the motherboard. It's time for cooling. The Ryzen 9 7900 CPU came with a stock cooler, but I wanted an upgrade. So I got myself one of the best air coolers out there. The Noctua NH-D15. There's a lot to unpack, so try and stick with me. The Noctua NH-D15 has 2 different types of mounts depending on the CPU you're using. Don't worry though, because Noctua gives you both the AMD and Intel mounts, and also the respective manuals. Since I'm using an AMD CPU, I put the Intel stuff to the side. To attach the cooler, I first removed the default cooling mounts on the motherboard using the included hex key. Next, I attached Noctua's custom mounts, following the instructions on the manual. After screwing them in place, I applied Noctua's thermal paste onto the CPU. I might have put a bit too much, but it should be fine. I screwed the heatsink on top of the CPU, which took a little bit of work, and then I attached both of the fans to the heatsink. I placed this fan a little bit higher than the other one because of the RAM sticks, but it should be fine. Finally, I used the included cables Noctua provided and connected the fans to the motherboard. With the fans installed, I think I can move on to putting it in the case. The case I chose is a Corsair 4000D Airflow. I removed the front panel and back panel from the case, and then laid the box on its side. I took my motherboard and aligned its back I/O with its opening and screwed it in place using the included case screws. After making sure everything was secure, I installed the case cables into the motherboard. Next up on the checklist is the power supply. I have an 850 watt power supply from Corsair, which should be way more than enough for this PC build. It came with a ton of cables and I had absolutely no idea what to do with them, so I decided to just install the power supply in the case first. I placed the power supply with the fan facing the dust filter, and then I screwed it in place. It's important to screw in an X pattern to ensure even pressure. Alright, time for the star of the show, the GPU. I have an RTX 4070, and if you know anything about GPUs, then you know that this was a mistake. But you know, it's too late to change that. Installing it is pretty easy. I removed the safety covers on the GPU and then removed some of the brackets on the case. I inserted the GPU into the PCIe slot on my motherboard and gave it a push to install it. Finally, I secured the GPU with some screws. And now, the GPU is installed. Back to the power supply. So I actually only need 3 cables out of the like bajillion that they sent me. I need the CPU cable, the motherboard cable, and the PCIe cable. After plugging them into the power supply and the respective spots in the motherboard, I am very, very close to being done with this computer build. So I'm going to quickly gloss over case fans, but basically, I got 4 Noctua fans and set 3 of them for intake and 1 of them for exhaust. This way I can have a positive airflow, which enables my computer to have constant fresh air. Anyways, here's my reaction to my computer working for the very first time. Let's go! I made it to post screen. I made it to post screen. I think that's good. I think that works. After that, I installed Windows 11 for free because I'm a magician and I can do that. Then I also installed the necessary drivers. Finally, I reattached the case panels and peeled off the plastic to officially end the build. So, I built a PC, and yes, I did do a user benchmark test. I'm done. Goodbye.